The Galactic Council chamber was the largest room had ever seen. It stretched so far that the walls seemed to curve with the shape of the space station itself. Thousands of seats rose in great circles, and in those seats sat creatures that had only read about in reports. Some had too many eyes, some had no eyes at all, some floated in tanks of strange liquids, others were made of light or shadow or something in between. All of them had come here for the same reason. The galaxy was about to fall apart and nobody knew how to stop it. Was a linguist from. He had spent 20 years studying languages, first on Earth, then on the colony ships, and finally here at the center of galactic civilization. He was not important. He was not powerful. He was simply a man who loved words and the way they connected people. But right now, words were the problem. In the center of the chamber, a being made of living crystal stood on the speaker's platform. This was one of the ancient translator species that had served the galaxy for 3,000 years. Their minds could process any language instantly. Every treaty, every trade deal, every peace agreement in galactic history had passed through their perfect translations. It was flickering. Its crystal body pulsed with colors that had learned to recognize as distress. Something was very wrong. "I cannot complete the translation," they said. Its voice rang like bells in the vast chamber. "The human phrase does not convert. There is no equivalent in or language structures." A wave of confused sound swept through the council. Leaned forward in his seat, his heart beating fast. Beside him, Park pulled up data on her tablet. She was a computational linguist, brilliant and practical, and she had been his partner on this mission for 3 months. "They're trying to translate the Earth Trade Agreement," she whispered. "Look at this. That has been stuck on the same phrase for 2 hours." Looked at the phrase displayed on her screen. It was simple English, something any human child would understand. "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it." He almost laughed, almost, but the situation was too serious for laughter. The ambassador rose from its seat. It was a creature of living shadow, tall and shifting, with eyes that glowed like dying stars. When it spoke, its voice was cold and sharp. "The humans mock us," the ambassador declared. "They speak of bridges that do not exist. They promise to cross things they have no intention of building. This is deception. This is an insult to the Empire." On the other side of the chamber, the delegate made a sound like breaking glass. There were beings of pure energy, contained in special suits that gave them shape. "We agree with assessment. Human language is chaos. Human intention is unclear. The treaty cannot proceed." Watch the chaos spread. Species that had never agreed on anything were now united in their confusion about humanity. 3 months of careful negotiation was falling apart because of an idiom. An idiom, a simple expression that every human used without thinking, but to species who processed language literally, it was nonsense, worse than nonsense. It was proof that humans could not be trusted. Grabbed his arm. "We have to do something." "What can we do? We're observers, we don't have speaking rights." "Then get speaking rights. Talk to Counselor Bay now." Pushed through the crowd of alien observers until he found Counselor Bay. She was humanity's official representative to the Galactic Council, a woman in her 60s with gray hair and steady eyes. She had the reputation of being unshakable. Right now, even she looked worried. Counselor said, bowing quickly, "I know what's happening, I can explain it." Studied him for a moment. "You're the linguist, right, from the cultural integration team?" "Yes, they aren't failing because they're broken. They're failing because human language doesn't work the way other languages work." "Explain quickly." Took a deep breath. Every other species in the galaxy developed language to communicate information. Their words mean exactly what they say, but humans develop language differently. Our words carry meaning that isn't in the words themselves. When we say we'll cross a bridge when we come to it, we don't mean a real bridge. We mean we'll deal with a problem when it appears. It's a picture inside the words, a story inside the sounds. His eyes narrowed, and they can't see that picture. No, they translate words perfectly, but they can't translate meaning, and for humans meaning is everything. The chamber was growing louder. The ambassador was now demanding that humanity be expelled from council space. Other species were joining the call. Thousands of years of distrust toward newcomers was pouring out, all because of one small phrase. Made a decision. She stood up straight, touched a button on her collar, and walked toward the speaker's platform. The crowd parted for her. Humans were still new enough to the galaxy that everyone wanted to see what they would do. I request emergency speaking rights, announced, her voice carrying through the chamber's amplification system. The council chair, an ancient being that looked like a tree made of metal, leaned forward. On what grounds? On the grounds that we are being accused of deception, and we deserve the chance to defend ourselves. A long pause, then the chair nodded. Granted, speak, human. Turned to face the assembly. Thousands of alien eyes watched her, held his breath. My species is young, began. We have been traveling among the stars for less than 200 years. You have all been here for thousands, some of you for millions. We are small. We are brief. We do not have your technology or your wisdom or your power. She paused, letting her words settle. But we have something else. We have learned in our short time on our small planet that words are not just sounds. Words are bridges. She smiled slightly. Real bridges and bridges of the mind. When a human says they will cross a bridge when they come to it, they are saying, I trust the future. I believe we will find a way. I have hope. The chamber was silent now. The translate your words perfectly, continued. They have done so for 3,000 years, but perfect translation is not the same as perfect understanding. My people make mistakes. We use strange phrases. We speak in pictures and dreams and feelings. But we also listen, not just to words, but to the silence between them. Not just to what is said, but to what is meant. She looked directly at the ambassador. You feel insulted. You feel that we have tricked you. But I ask you to consider, if we wanted to deceive you, why would we use phrases you could not understand? Would it not be smarter to lie with clear words? The shadow being did not respond, but its form stopped shifting. It was listening. We are not here to replace this, said. We are here to add something new, a different way of understanding, a bridge between the words you speak and the meanings you intend. She turned to face the whole chamber once more. Give us a chance. Let us show you what human translation can do, and if we fail, we will accept your judgment. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then slowly the council chair spoke. The human request is noted. This council will deliberate. Session adjourned until tomorrow. As the chamber began to empty, found in the crowd, her face was pale but hopeful. Do you think it worked? She asked. Watch counselor walking away, surrounded by alien delegates who wanted to speak with her. For the first time since arriving at the station, he felt something like optimism. I think, he said slowly, we just started something very important, and I think we had better be ready for what comes next. 3 days passed before the council made its decision. In that time, Counselor Bay did not sleep. She met with delegates from 40 different species. She answered the same questions again and again. She smiled when she wanted to scream and stayed calm when she wanted to run. On the 4th day, the council chair announced that humanity would be given one chance to prove itself. A single test. If they passed, they would be allowed to serve as translators alongside the. If they failed, they would be expelled from council space forever. Accepted the challenge without hesitation. Now she stood in a smaller chamber facing her team, was there, looking nervous but determined. Park sat beside him, her tablet already full of notes, and 3 others had arrived from Earth on emergency transport, called in because knew they would need the best. Lee was a large man with a gentle face and tired eyes. He had spent 30 years as a hostage negotiator for the Korean National Police. His longest case had lasted 47 hours. He had talked a man with a bomb out of a crowded building using nothing but his voice and his patience. He understood fear, and he understood how to reach people who had stopped listening. Was small and thin, with short hair and ink-stained fingers. She was a poet whose work had been banned in 3 countries because her words had the power to change minds. Governments feared her because she could make people feel things they did not want to feel. She understood the weight of language. Han was the youngest, barely 30 years old. His father had been a diplomat and had grown up in embassies around the world. He spoke 11 languages fluently and could make himself understood in 20 more. But his real gift was simpler than that. He could walk into any room, anywhere in the galaxy, and make people like him. The test is simple, told them. The Empire and the Collective have been fighting over mining rights in the Outer Rim for 600 years. 600 years of war, broken treaties, and dead soldiers. They have tried to negotiate peace dozens of times. Every attempt has failed. Nodded slowly, and we're supposed to succeed where they couldn't. We're supposed to try. If we can make any progress at all, it will prove that human translation has value. Leaned back in her chair. What do we know about these species, beyond the basic files? Pulled up her data. They are beings of living shadow. They evolved on a planet with no light. Their entire culture is built around darkness, stillness, and patience. They don't smile because they have no faces. They show respect by becoming more solid, more present. They show anger by dissolving, spreading thin until they fill a whole room. And the energy beings. They come from a star that was dying, so they learned to convert their bodies into pure light. They're fast thinkers, fast talkers, fast everything. They show happiness by getting brighter. They show anger by flickering like a light about to go out. Frowned. So one species is all about stillness and darkness, and the other is all about speed and light. No wonder they can't agree on anything. It's worse than that, said. He had been quiet until now, thinking. The translation of their last negotiation showed that both sides actually wanted the same thing. They both wanted to share the mining rights fairly. But every time they tried to agree, the talks broke down. Why? Because of how they say yes, stood up and walked to the display screen. When it agrees to something important, they go completely still. They stop moving. They become as solid as stone. It's their way of showing commitment. They're saying, I am here. I am not going anywhere. This agreement is permanent. And when it agrees to something important, they get brighter and start moving faster. They're saying, I am excited. I am happy. I want to move forward quickly before anything changes. Understood immediately. So when they see the getting bright and fast, they think they are being disrespectful, too casual, not taking the agreement seriously. And when they see the going still and solid, added, they think they are being cold, unfriendly, maybe even threatening. Exactly, said. They've been trying to say yes to each other for 600 years, and every time their yes looks like an insult to the other side. Smiled for the first time in days. Then we know where to start. Tomorrow you five will sit between thee and the. You will not translate their words. The will do that. Your job is to translate their intentions. Make each side understand what the other truly means. The negotiation chamber was arranged in a circle. The delegation sat on one side, their shadow forms dark and still. The delegation sat on the other, their energy bodies bright and restless. In the middle sat the human team, looking very small and very fragile between these ancient powers. The translator stood to the side, its crystal body pulsing with barely hidden hostility. It would translate the words. It had no choice, but it clearly hoped the humans would fail. The ambassador spoke first. Its voice was like wind through an empty building. We have come to talk again, though we expect nothing. The translated the words into frequency patterns, perfect, accurate, and completely missing the point. Before they could respond, leaned forward. He had been watching them carefully. Now he spoke, his voice low and calm. The ambassador is tired, said. Not of negotiating, tired of hopping and being disappointed. 600 years is a long time to want something and not get it. The ambassador doesn't expect failure because they want failure. They expect it because hope has become too painful. They went completely still, solid, present. For a long moment nothing moved in the chamber. Then the ambassador spoke again, its voice different now, softer. The human sees us. On the other side the delegate flickered rapidly. How do you know this? How can you know what another being feels? Answered, because we have felt it too. Humans live very short lives compared to you. We learn early that time is precious. We learn to read each other quickly because we don't have centuries to figure out what someone means. We look at eyes, at hands, at the way someone stands. We listen to what isn't said. We feel the weight of silences. The delegate grew brighter. This is interesting, continue. The negotiation lasted 12 hours. Whenever the translated words, the humans translated meanings. When the went still, explained that this was respect, commitment, permanence. When the brightened and sped up, explained that this was joy, eagerness, good faith. Slowly, something changed in the room. They began to watch the differently. They began to slow down just a little when speaking to the. They were learning each other's language, not of words but of being. At the 10th hour, the ambassador made an offer. Shared mining rights, equal division, joint oversight committee. It was the same offer that had been rejected 20 times before. But this time, when the delegate responded, stepped in. Wait, she said, before you answer I want to explain something. When the ambassador made this offer, they went completely solid. In culture, this is the highest form of commitment. They are saying, this offer is not a game. This offer is part of me now. I am putting my whole self behind these words. The delegate flickered thoughtfully. Then it did something no had ever done in 600 years of negotiation with the. It dimmed itself, it slowed down, it became for just a moment still. I understand, the delegate said. I accept. The ambassador made a sound that no human could translate, but they didn't need to. Everyone in the room could feel what it meant. 600 years of war ended in that moment, not because the words changed. The words had always been the same. But finally, both sides understood what those words truly meant. Outside the chamber met her team. They all looked exhausted, drained, but they were smiling. The council will have to accept us now, said. Shook her head. This is just the beginning. We proved we can help. Now we have to prove we can keep helping, every day, every negotiation, every misunderstanding. Put a hand on her shoulder. Then we'd better get some sleep. I have a feeling tomorrow will be very busy. He was right. By morning, 17 species had requested human translators. The word was spreading through the galaxy. There were beings out there who could hear what you meant, not just what you said. And suddenly, everyone wanted to talk. 2 years passed and everything changed. The Institute for Contextual Translation started in a small office on the Galactic Council Station. Who had once been a literature professor in Seoul, now ran an operation that employed 300 humans and served over 2,000 species. Their headquarters had moved to a converted asteroid that orbited a neutral star. The rock had been hollowed out and filled with meeting rooms, translation chambers, training facilities, and living quarters. Ships came and went at all hours, carrying diplomats and merchants and ordinary people who needed help being understood. Stood at the window of her office, watching a transport dock at the main port. Her desk was covered with alien texts, each one marked with her small, careful handwriting. Notes about context, notes about history, notes about the emotional weight of specific sounds. Director Shin appeared at her door. Was her deputy, a young woman who had once worked as an interpreter for the United Nations. She had proven herself 100 times over in the last 2 years, but right now her face was troubled. What is it? We have a problem, a big one. Turned from the window. In 2 years she had learned that problems came in many sizes. Small problems could be fixed with patience. Medium problems required creativity. Big problems meant someone might die. Show me. Led her to the communications center, where a dozen human operators monitored incoming requests. The main screen showed a news broadcast from the home system. A crystal being was speaking to a crowd of thousands. Its body pulsed with colors that had learned to recognize as anger, fear, and determination. Behind it, the great translation spires rose into a purple sky. These towers had been the heart of galactic communication for 3,000 years. The humans have stolen our purpose, they said. Its voice rang like thunder. For we served the galaxy faithfully. We were trusted. We were needed. Now these short-lived creatures come with their strange tricks and suddenly we are forgotten. The crowd of crystal beings flickered in agreement. They do not translate. They manipulate. They read minds and twist meanings and make species trust each other when they should not. This is not communication. This is control. Watch the broadcast in silence. Beside her shifted nervously. It's getting worse, said. They've started a formal campaign. 18 species have received messages warning them that human translators cannot be trusted. Which species? Mostly ones we haven't worked with yet. They're trying to stop us from expanding. Nodded slowly. She had expected this. They had been the backbone of galactic civilization for longer than humans had existed as a species. Their entire identity was built on being necessary. And now, suddenly, they were not. They don't hate us, said quietly. They fear us, fear of becoming obsolete, fear of losing their place in the universe. Is there a difference? Yes, hate we could fight. Fear makes them desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. The desperate things started small. A translation was questioned. A human interpreter named had worked on a trade agreement between the collective and the Federation. The deal was simple, mining rights in exchange for water purification technology. Both sides had agreed. Both sides had been happy. Then they produced a document showing that the final agreement did not match translation. Words had been changed. Meanings had been altered. The accusation was clear. The human had committed fraud. Was a good translator, had trained him herself. He was careful, thoughtful, and honest. She could not believe he would deliberately alter a document. But the evidence was there, and the galaxy was watching. "Where is now?" asked. "He's been detained at the council station. They are demanding a formal trial." Then we go to the council station. The journey took 2 days, spent most of it reviewing the case. The documents, the translation records, the original conversations. Something was wrong, she could feel it, but she could not see it. When she arrived, she found the human delegation in chaos. Counselor Bay met her at the port, looking older than she had 2 years ago. The stress was showing. "This is bad," said. "If he's found guilty, it won't just end his career. It will end everything we've built. The other species will stop trusting us. Then we need to prove he's innocent." "With what?" "The documents clearly show changes." "Thought about this?" The documents showed changes, but documents were just words on a screen. They were not the truth. The truth was in the conversation itself. "Get me the original recording," she said. "Not the transcript, the actual sounds from the negotiation chamber. They control the archives." "Then ask them. Officially. They can't refuse without looking like they have something to hide." It took a day to get the recording. When it arrived, locked herself in a small room and listened, hour after hour. The delegate clicking its mandibles, the delegate bubbling through its water tank, his voice, calm and professional, moving between them. And there it was, a moment so small that anyone else would have missed it. The delegate made an offer. In the transcript it read, "We demand equal access to the water purification technology." But when listened to the original sounds, she heard something different. The clicking pattern of the mandibles changed at the end of the sentence, a slight rise in pitch, a tiny pause before the final click. In body language, this meant the statement was conditional, not a demand, a request, a hope, something that could be refused without offense. Had translated it correctly, "We respectfully request consideration for equal access." Polite, careful, true. The transcript was technically accurate. The words were right, but the meaning was wrong, and someone had used that wrong meaning to alter the final document. Sat back in her chair, she finally understood. They weren't lying. They had translated the words perfectly, just as they had always done. But they had never understood that words and meaning were not the same thing. They had provided accurate words, and someone had used those words to create a false document. But who? She thought about the campaign against humanity, the warnings sent to other species, the growing fear of obsolescence. Would they go this far? Would they deliberately sabotage a human translator to prove that humans could not be trusted? She did not want to believe it, but she had no other explanation. Director knocked on the door. "The trial starts in 6 hours. Gathered her files. "I know what happened, but proving it won't be easy." "What do you need?" "I need to show the council the difference between words and truth, and I need to do it in a way that even they cannot deny." She looked at the recording device in her hand. The sounds were all there. The clicks carrying meanings that no written transcript could capture. The silences between words heavy with emotion. The truth hiding in plain sight. "Get me a speaker's permit," she said, "and tell to hold on. This isn't over yet." 6 hours. 6 hours to prepare a defense that would either save human translation or destroy it forever. Took a deep breath and got to work. The trial chamber was smaller than the main council hall, but it felt larger because of what was at stake. Representatives from every major species had come to watch. The gallery was full. Screens throughout the station broadcast the proceedings live. The entire galaxy was paying attention. Sat in the accused's chair, a glass booth in the center of the room. He was pale but calm. His hands rested on his knees and he kept his eyes forward. Had spoken with him briefly before the trial. He had said only one thing: "I did not lie. Whatever happens, I want you to know that." She believed him. Now she had to make everyone else believe him too. The prosecutor stood on a raised platform, its crystal body catching the chamber lights. It had introduced itself as senior translator, and its colors shifted with barely controlled satisfaction. This was the moment they had been waiting for, proof that humans could not be trusted. "The evidence is clear," began. Its voice rang through the chamber like struck glass. "The final document shows alterations from the original agreement. Words were changed. Meanings were shifted. The human translator is responsible for these changes." A holographic display appeared, showing the two versions of the document side by side. The differences were highlighted in red. There were dozens of them. The agreement should have read, both parties demand equal access to shared resources. Instead, the human version reads, both parties respectfully request mutual consideration for resource sharing. Colors pulsed with righteous anger. These are not small changes. These are fundamental alterations to the meaning and intent of the agreement. Murmurs spread through the gallery. Watched the faces of the alien delegates. She saw doubt. She saw suspicion. 2 years of trust built word by word was crumbling. The council chair, the ancient tree being of metal and wood, leaned forward. The prosecution has presented its evidence. Does the defense wish to respond? Stood, we do. She walked to the center of the chamber, carrying a small device in her hand. She was aware of every eye watching her, every camera, every judgment being formed in every mind. They have presented the words of this document, she said. Her voice was steady, even though her heart was racing. I present something different. I present the conversation that created it. She activated the device. Sound filled the chamber, the clicking of mandibles, the bubbling of water speech, and voice moving between them, building bridges. Listen to the delegate's third statement, said. She paused the recording and rewound it. The clicking pattern played again, slower this time. The translation reads, we demand equal access. This is technically correct. The word sounds match the dictionary entry for demand. She looked at, the crystal being's colors had shifted, becoming uncertain. But watch the delegate's mandibles. Listen to the pattern. She played the sound once more. There is a rise in pitch at the end, a small pause before the final click. In body language, this changes everything. It transforms a demand into a request, a command into a hope. The delegate was not demanding anything. They were asking with the understanding that the answer might be no. The chamber was silent. Translated this as, we respectfully request consideration for equal access. This is not a change in meaning. This is the actual meaning. The translated the sounds, translated the truth. She turned to face the whole chamber. For 3,000 years they have served this galaxy faithfully. Their word translations are perfect, but words are only part of language. Language also lives in the body, in the silences, in the small sounds that carry emotion. This is what humans hear. This is what we translate. Flickered rapidly. The human admits that she changed the words. I admit that translated them, which is what you have failed to do. The words hung in the air. Knew she had gone too far. Insulting them would not help, but she was tired. Tired of defending something that should not need defending. Tired of proving that understanding mattered. The council chair raised a limb for silence. The prosecution has claimed that the document was altered fraudulently. The defense claims the alterations were necessary for accurate translation. Is there evidence that the changes caused harm? Pulled up another file. The collective and the Federation signed the agreement that translated. Both parties have confirmed their satisfaction. The trade relationship is active and profitable for both sides. If translation was fraudulent, why did both parties agree to it? Why are both parties happy? She turned to the gallery where the delegates sat. Representatives of the collective, when you signed this agreement, did you feel deceived? The delegate, a large being with 4 arms and clicking mandibles, stood slowly. Its translator device hummed. We did not feel deceived. We felt understood. For the first time in 50 years of negotiating with other species, we felt that someone heard what we actually meant. Nodded, and the Federation. The delegate, a shimmering form in a water-filled suit, gurgled its response. The human translator explained the position in a way that made sense to us. He told us they were asking, not demanding. This changed how we responded. We were more willing to give because we did not feel forced. Colors were now shifting wildly. This proves nothing. The human manipulated both parties into agreeing. No, said. Helped both parties understand each other. That is not manipulation, that is translation. She walked back to the center of the chamber. The prosecutor asked how I knew what the delegate felt, how I knew that demand was really request. The answer is simple. I listened, not just to words, to silence, to the pause between sounds, to the way a voice changes when someone is afraid of being rejected. She looked at directly now. I know they are afraid, not of humans, of becoming unnecessary. For 3,000 years you have been the bridge between species. You have connected the galaxy. That is important work, sacred work. And now you see humans doing something you cannot do and it frightens you. When completely dark, its colors vanished. In body language, this was shame. "We are not your enemies," said more gently now. "We are not here to replace you. We are here to add something that you cannot provide. Your translations are perfect. Ours are not. But ours carry something that perfection cannot capture. They carry understanding." She turned to the council chair. Did not commit fraud. He did his job. He heard what the truly meant, and he found words that would carry that meaning to the... He built a bridge, not with words but with understanding. The chair was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke. "The defense has presented its case. This council will deliberate. 3 days. 3 days of waiting. 3 days of watching news broadcasts debate whether humans could be trusted. 3 days of sitting in his small cell, reading books and waiting for his fate to be decided. Spent those days working. There were other translations to oversee, other misunderstandings to resolve, other bridges to build. She could not stop even now. On the fourth day, the verdict came. The chamber was even more crowded than before. Every seat was filled. The air hummed with tension. The council chair rose slowly. Its metal branches creaked with age. "This council has deliberated. We find the following." Held her breath. The human is not guilty of fraud. The evidence shows that his translation, while different from the version, more accurately captured the intent of the speaking parties. Relief flooded through, but the chair was not finished. Furthermore, this council formally recognizes the Institute for Contextual Translation as an equal partner to the Linguistic Council. Human translators will be granted the same authority and protection as translators in all council matters. The chamber erupted. Some species cheered. Others sat in stunned silence. The delegates flickered with colors that could not read. She found in the crowd. He was crying, tears running down his face as other humans embraced him. He looked at her across the room and mouthed 2 words, "Thank you." She nodded, but she did not feel like celebrating. They had won this battle. But she knew, with the certainty that comes from understanding people too well, that the war was not over. They would not forget this day, and fear, she knew, had a way of growing in the dark. 6 months after the trial, stood at the window of her office and watched the ships arrive. There were so many of them now. Every day, dozens of vessels docked at the Institute asteroid. They came from every corner of the galaxy, carrying diplomats and merchants and scientists and ordinary people. All of them had the same need, to be understood. The Institute had grown beyond anything had imagined. What started with 5 humans in a small room now employed over 1,000 translators. They worked in shifts, around the clock, helping species communicate across the vast distances of culture and biology. But was not celebrating. She turned from the window and looked at her team, gathered in the common room. Was there, older now with gray in his hair. Park sat beside him, her tablet ever present. Lee leaned against the wall, his arms crossed. Perched on a chair, her ink-stained fingers tapping the armrest. Han stood by the door, watching the others. And there were new faces, too. Cleared of all charges, had become one of their best senior translators. Nam, barely 25 years old, had proven herself a natural at reading emotions across species barriers. Dozens of others filled the room, waiting to hear what had to say. "We won," began. Her voice was quiet and the room fell silent to hear her. "The council recognized us. They have stopped their campaign against us. Species that once refused to work with humans are now requesting our services." She paused. "But we have not won anything." Frowned. "I don't understand. Isn't this what we wanted?" "What we wanted was to be heard. What we got was responsibility. They spent 3,000 years building trust with the galaxy. 3,000 years of perfect translations, perfect reliability, perfect service. Now we are their equals and we have to earn that equality every single day." She walked to the center of the room. "One mistake, one wrong translation, one misunderstanding that we should have caught but didn't. That's all it will take to destroy everything we've built. They are waiting for us to fail, and so is half the galaxy." Nodded slowly. "So what do? We get better. Every day we learn more. We study more species, more cultures, more ways of being. We never assume we understand something when we don't. We ask questions. We admit when we're wrong. We stay humble." Spoke up. "And what about they may have stopped their public campaign, but that doesn't mean they've accepted us." "No," agreed. "It doesn't, but I've been thinking about them a lot lately, trying to understand what they're feeling. She looked out the window again, at the stars and the ships and the vast darkness of space. For 3,000 years, they were the glue that held the galaxy together. Every peace treaty passed through their minds, every trade agreement, every declaration of friendship between species. They were necessary in a way that most beings never get to be necessary. And then we came along, said. And then we came along. And suddenly, they weren't the only ones who could do what they did. They weren't unique anymore. And for a species whose entire identity was built on that uniqueness, that must have been terrifying. Pushed himself off the wall. You sound like you feel sorry for them. I do. Fear makes people do terrible things, but it also comes from somewhere real. They aren't wrong to worry about their place in the galaxy. They're just wrong about how to protect it. Spoke up, what do you mean? Turned to face him. The galaxy doesn't need one translator species. It needs many. They are perfect at what they do. They translate words with absolute precision. But there are things they cannot do. They cannot hear the emotion behind words. They cannot feel the weight of silence. They cannot understand why someone might say one thing and mean another. She smiled slightly. That's where we come in. Humans aren't perfect. Our translations are sometimes rough. Sometimes we make mistakes, but we catch things that perfect translation misses. We build bridges where words alone would fail. So you think we should work together, said humans and. Yes, eventually, when they're ready, when we've proven ourselves enough that they stop seeing us as a threat and start seeing us as partners. A soft chime sounded through the room. New requests were coming in, more ships arriving, more species needing help. Looked at her team, these strange, wonderful humans who had somehow become the galaxy's bridge builders. The council recognized us as equals to the, but equality isn't given, it's earned. Every translation we do, every misunderstanding we prevent, every war we help avoid, we prove our worth. Not to the council, not to the beings who need us. She picked up the first file from the new stack of requests, a border dispute between two species who had been fighting for a century. Both sides had requested human translators. Both sides were tired of war. The galaxy doesn't need perfect translation, said. It needs understanding, and that's something you can't find in any dictionary. She opened the file and began to read. Outside, the ships kept coming, creatures from distant stars, speaking languages that had never been heard by human ears. They came with hope, with fear, with desperation. They came because they had heard that there were beings who could hear what wasn't being said, beings who could feel the weight of words. In the medical bay, a human translator sat with a dying alien, listening to its final wishes and promising to carry them to its family across the galaxy. In the negotiation chamber, two species who had been enemies for 500 years were learning, word by word, that they wanted the same things. In the training rooms, young humans practiced the art of listening, of reading, of understanding. And in her office, worked late into the night preparing for tomorrow's challenges. There would always be more conflicts, more misunderstandings, more beings who needed help being heard. But that was okay, that was the job. Somewhere in the galaxy, a ship was carrying a message of peace. Somewhere, a translator was explaining why one species smiled while another stayed still. Somewhere, two beings who had never understood each other were finally beginning to talk. The words were just sounds, just shapes on a page, just patterns in the air. But behind them, meanings flowed like rivers, emotions echoed like music, truths emerged from silences. And humans, those strange, short-lived creatures from a small blue world, were learning to hear them all. That was their gift to the galaxy, not perfection, not power, just the simple, endless work of understanding. Finished the file and reached for the next one. Outside her window, the stars burned bright and cold, and the ships kept coming, and the work never ended. It was, she thought, exactly as it should be. The story of human translation was just beginning, and she would not have it any other way.